First for receiving your call from God, and whatever capacity that is, it was a very wonderful time, very glorious time. The DNA of all you were going to be was in you. And then God says, okay, now we're going to do something wonderful. Bloop. And he buries you in obscurity. No one can see you. No one can tell how great you are. No one's telling good stories about all the great things you're going to do. You're buried in obscurity. You're buried in dirt. All you do is serve. All you do is work. All you do is labor. You're hiding. You're buried in the sheepfold. But something happens if you'll just stay buried. Something happens if you'll just stay dead.
Yes.
Something happens if you won't scrape the dirt off your grave. If you'll just stay where the Lord puts you, and you'll serve where the Lord puts you, you will begin to grow in ways that other people cannot see.
Come on.
You'll begin to develop in ways in your heart that other people will not know about. It'll be between you and Him. And it won't be about anyone else. It'll be about your relationship with Him. And there will be root systems begin to go out of you. And there'll be blades reaching up for you. And then one day when you walk by the field, you'll notice, look at that. Look at all those little green blades coming up in rows down that field. Something's been going on. The hidden hand of God has been at work in the seed. The principle of sowing and seed, the seed time and harvest is coming to pass. And what a wonderful time it is. You just go park your truck by the fence or by the road and just look out there and you say, look at what God's doing. It's a glorious miracle. Look at all these seeds.
Hallelujah.
And if you'll just stay buried, you're not ready for harvest. If you just stay dug in, if you'll just stay buried, if you just stay where you're planted, you'll continue to grow. And first will come up a stem, and then will come up a blade, and then on the top of the stem will come a pod or a group of pods, a cluster. And it's wonderful as you watch the wheat begin to grow. And you see first the blade, or you see first the stem, then the blade, and then the cluster and the pods. And they begin to grow, and they begin to grow, and you watch over them, and the farmer, he's looking over your fields, and he's saying, look, they're just developing along so great, and you're feeling so good about things because you're finally able to be seen. And folks can kind of see your development, and they can kind of see some of your gifts sign, and they can see who you really are, and you can see that the gardener really does love you, and really does have a plan, and you're all together with all the other called ones, all the other seeds, and you're kind of waving in the wind as the wind of the Spirit comes. And when the rain comes, the blades just kind of open up and capture the rain, and it falls down into the root system. And when the sun comes out, the blade just kind of opens up, and the stem just kind of swings the pods up a little taller. And they just draw in the nutrient from the sun. Very tender, very delicate, very vulnerable in those days. And the farmer just keeps watching over the seed, watching over the stem, watching over the blade, watching as the cluster develops, and as the pods develop within the cluster. There's a certain maturity before that begins to happen. And you go on through the summer, and you get stronger and more beautiful and more vibrant. And one day here comes the dark clouds of thunderstorms. And hidden back up in those clouds is something called ice or hail. And the winds begin to blow. And it begins to come against your stem, against your blade, against your pod. And you see, because if the stem breaks over and the pod lays on the ground, it'll rot there. The stem has a vital purpose. It lifts the pod. The blade has a vital purpose. It gathers the nutrients. The root system have a vital purpose. They're drawing from the earth. And so the blade, you know, it bends, but it doesn't break. It blows, but it doesn't blow over. It has extreme resiliency. It'll come back up. And you endure the storms. And you go, I made it. We're going to survive. My calling, my leadership, my gift, it's going to survive. And you look out across the field and you go, man, we look pretty good. Look at that little ripple of wind coming across that grain field. That nice green grain looks pretty good. Isn't that pretty awesome? We're getting pretty tall. Look at us. Look at us eagles nesters. We're really becoming something. And then it gets really hot. And the delightful rains that you're so used to in the spring cease. And you're digging deep for water. Your roots are going down deep for nutrient.
Yeah.
And it gets very hot. It gets scorching hot. And your blades are starting to wither. Have you seen this happen? And then finally the Lord sends a latter rain. And you kind of spread out. And when you go by, the fresh aroma and the dust has gotten worse off of you. And it's just glorious. And you notice that we're changing color. We're starting to mature a little bit. There's a golden hue coming to us. And actually, you don't know it, but you're dying. Because you can't produce life until you've tasted in his death.
Yeah.
Okay? And it gets darker and darker until you see the golden fields of grain. Aren't they beautiful? They're glorious. And when you look at them, there's the joy that it's harvest time. Look at them. And the farmer is very busy because he knows that I must harvest this grain before the snows of winter come. Because when the snows of winter come, this grain is no longer growing. It's actually dying. And the last bit of nutrient that's been flowing up through the stem from the root system and the seed and the blade is being poured into that little cluster, those little pods, those hard little pods at the top of the stem. And he says, I need to get this harvested, or else if the snow's come and it lays down on the ground, it'll rot. It will not survive the winter. And it will not be what it was ever supposed to be. And so the next day he comes to the field that you've been watching him, glowing over you, looking over you, proud of you, bringing his farmer friends by to say, look at this, and this awesome one, how many bushel per acre here, this pretty neat church here, wonderful ministry.
Come on.
Look at the harvest, look what God's doing. And then he shows up the next day and he's got this giant sickle in his hand. We're going to go back a ways. We're going to go to the old times. And you go, that thing looks sharp. Oh, he's been sharpening it. And he begins to walk out in the field, and he reaches back and goes, hey, 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 whoa, 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 Dad, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he cuts you off from your root systems. And you fall over like mowed grass in the field.
Wow.
And he works the entire field until every stem and every blade and every cluster and every pod is laying on the ground.